that we are doing that. Okay, and then sing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Maddox Digital and Customer Success Summit. You are currently watching Driving Adoption and Retention Through Personalized Digital Experiences. I'm excited to introduce our speaker, and as I introduce them, I'm going to have them answer our icebreaker question. What is your biggest digital addiction? So Erica Aykroyd is currently the VP of Customer Success at Varuna and previously the Director of Scaled Customer Success and Education at Pendo. I'll go ahead and hand it over to Erica.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Lately, I have been a little bit obsessed with the New York Times crossword. So if you haven't done that, highly recommend it. It's a good brain teaser. I am going to get started, and I'm really excited to chat about driving customer outcomes through personalized experiences. And this is such a common challenge among, any product or customer-facing team. So I'm excited to give you a sneak peek behind the curtain into how we did it at Pendo. And I learned so much from my time at Pendo that the experience was really special because I was able to use our own product to build out these strategies. So it's an extra special treat for me to be able to take a trip down memory lane and talk to you all about this. And my dog's going to be in the background. So, you know, don't worry about her. So I just wanted to share a little bit more background about the education team at Pendo and its mission, just to set the stage for all the work that the team is responsible for. The mission is to bridge the gap between all of the possibilities of Pendo and connect them to practical application, with the key of being sustainable learning practices for all of our users, regardless of segment. So that means when we're thinking about creating content and different experiences, we're trying to meet the various needs of our customer base. So that goes from the new logo logging in for the first time to a seasoned pro who's looking to deepen their expertise. So we're trying to ensure that there are resources available for everybody. So, why this is so critical and why personalization is so difficult is I'm going to give you a little bit of a kind of a preview of kind of how we try to do this at scale. So, or why we try to do this at scale. So at Pendo, there's roughly 3,000 customers, companies large and small. And, that translates to around 8,000 people engaging with the platform week over week. And of those weekly, we're welcoming up to 700 new users a day. So that's a lot of people and it's a lot of unique needs to serve. But, that team isn't responsible for a specific book of business or, have a dedicated segment that they're supposed to focus on. The education team does something much bigger. We hold ourselves accountable to success of every customer. So whether you're a small startup or a large enterprise, your size or spend doesn't matter to us. And what matters is you're getting the knowledge and support that you need to be successful. And we all understand that achieving outcomes relies on personalization. It relies on understanding users' goals and guiding them to the right features for immediate value. But with thousands of customers, millions of users, the challenge really lies in scaling this personalization. And so, by delivering through a multi channel approach, we can accelerate that time to value without the need for extensive manual intervention. So how do we do this? This is why you're all here. We're going to talk you through the approach. We're going to talk through segmentation, defining customer journey, what tools we use, and how we measure our impact and iterate for continuous improvement. And so this is just our attempt to make learning accessible and personalized. So, we're not only trying to tailor to the user's unique needs, but also be proactive to meet them where they are. So first, in order to personalize the user experience, you have to know who your users are. Users need to see themselves in your product and feel like it's meant for them. So asking questions like, who are you? Why are you here? Really helps us understand their main priorities for using the product. So these questions help us tell the user we care about why they're here, and it helps us personalize their initial experience as well as down the line. So what you see here, just a couple of examples of data that we've used to personalize that first experience. Your company may collect similar data or has similar information that can be used. And if not, um, you can use tools that help you get that information. You This is an example of some guides that we used with Pendo that helped us to get this information before we had that built-in metadata. So now we're going to talk through the always fun customer journey mapping exercise. So before mapping your ideal customer journey, you want to start by asking yourself some key questions like, what is the white glove experience? Talking to your customer facing teams across all segments and involving them in the process is really key. So then you figure out, what can and actually should be scaled. So you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Customer facing teams probably have playbooks, and can share resources that they're already using when they're talking to customers. So include those teams in your journey mapping process. And you'll always want to ask yourself what resources are critical for new users, because we know that failure to launch is one of the most difficult things to save down the line. You also want to ask, how can we deepen engagement with power users to foster even greater loyalty within the community? And what about the users who aren't new but aren't adopting those critical features? And then what are the gaps in your resources? Is there a period of time where the user journey, they're not receiving a lot of communication? It's typically in between onboarding and renewal, right? People always say that's kind of like the messy middle. You can also review churn trends to see like what are the most common risk factors. And this will start to provide really valuable insights. So this looks really scary, but I just wanted to give kind of to show you all kind of what this looked like for us when we started mapping this out. So we noticed that we could be doing more to help users joining their account after their initial onboarding. So a new user can join at any point throughout the customer journey, but they have the same need for training on how to use the product. So these are the touch points that we built. But just to simplify this presentation, these are the four kind of key parts of the customer journey. And one thing that's really important for us is that, like I mentioned, you could have a customer who's been around for years, but then a new user joins, and you just don't know if that new user is going to be really critical moving forward and a potential champion. So we decided to shift our focus away from the initial customer timeline and switch it to the user's timeline. So that was the most beneficial way for us to design our experiences, was at the user level. So let's talk about tools to automate. When you're tackling a challenge like this, it is very clear that you cannot scale effectively without automation. So you got to zoom out and see what tools you have or don't have in order to be successful. So obviously for Pendo, the foundational tool in this process is Pendo. We use it as the central hub to collect all inputs. We have CRM, we have our BI tool, product usage, we've got what they're using in our LMS. So look to see what you have available, and all of that is going to be critical to understanding what's going on with the user. You may have something similar, or you may be using any one of these tools, but the important thing is to just get a sense of what you've got and maybe what's missing. All right, so now we're going to get to the good stuff. I'm going to show you actual examples to see how some of these principles have come to life. So after a user logs in for the first time, we welcome them and offer them a guided tour. And so what we quickly saw was that a majority of new users were choosing to skip the tour altogether. So this data was really crucial in shaping our approach, and it highlighted an important aspect of personalization, which is letting users choose their own path. So by offering them the choice and respecting their preferences, we were delivering a more personalized experience without us really even thinking about it. So if a user chooses to complete the tour or skip it, the goal really is just to empower them with resources they need to succeed. So this is really where what we call a resource center has become a huge part of our strategy. So regardless of if you take the tour or not, we say, hey, we're here to help. This is our on-demand, hub. So if a user wants to explore on their own, at least they're aware of where they can go get help later. And while it's very tempting to try to force users into specific experiences, the real challenge is understanding their needs and then adapting your approach to support them. So we want to accommodate users, not confine them to a learning model that doesn't suit them. So we quickly learned this lesson when we first started implementing that flow. Um, and so we first started presenting walkthroughs and stages within the Resource Center module here. And we thought it would be fun. We thought it would be the perfect way to gamify the experience and not overwhelm them with too much information all at once. But when we were actually looking at the data and what people were doing, it was very clear that that was not an effective strategy for our users. So we pivoted to show everything. Well, not everything that you can do, but really key product actions all up front. So that allowed users to navigate at their own pace, their engagement level. It offered flexibility to allow users to engage with the content that was right for them. And so this is really kind of what they see. And there's still some gamification because you can see there's like a progress bar. So that was a really quick pivot that we made. Um, and then from an email perspective, I talked earlier about a multi-channel experience. Um, if you said your use case was, I want to see product data, and you said that you were a customer success manager, then we provide you with resources for each of those topics in a series across your first week in the product. So the idea is to expose users to tailored content early so they know it's available when they need it. And we see really high engagement rates for these emails because users are seeing content that is personalized to them and what they said that they wanted to do. So if you're going to ask users what they want to do in the product, like you better follow up with something that is personalized to them. So in addition to our email strategy to do personalization, we also try in other channels. So the education team obviously is in charge of our LMS. So what you're seeing here is our academy. And so we use the same data that we would use to personalize emails and in-app content to personalize the learning experience. So we recommend courses based off of what they have or haven't taken and what products that they have. So really trying to expand their knowledge and expand their resources to all of our kind of learning resources. Okay, so we can't really talk about all of this without talking about the results because you're probably thinking, well, whatever, this could all be not real. But this helps us understand if we're successful and really exciting to see such great results after we employed this multi-channel personalized approach. So the first thing that we looked at was retention. So at Pendo, one of our North Star metrics was second week retention. So are users coming back after their first week in the product? So previously, only 14% of users with our initial approach, our like one channel approach, were coming back into the product after their second week. But after we started introducing emails, we saw that jump to 54%. So this really highlights the power of combining in-app and emails to support that onboarding journey. And it's just a clear indicator of how successful that's been. We've also been closely tracking the impact of the in-app walkthroughs. So among users who engaged with the guides, there was significant adoption of these critical events. So conversion rates are consistently strong across all of them, sometimes as high as 41% completion rates versus those who did not engage with any of our in-app content at all. So that led us to really thinking through like how do we get more people to engage with these walkthroughs. And last but not least, we saw a significant decrease in time to value. So time to first use is kind of important. It's an important metric for us to understand not just are they adopting these critical events, but are they adopting them as fast as possible? So we saw an average reduction of 21% across all of our core events. So, it's not just a one and done when you finish, I say finished in air quotes, but when you complete one experience, then it's important to always assess and iterate whether or not it's still working for your customers. So, um, you want to make sure that you're serving the variety of people with the varying needs and permissions of the product. So, we use a tool for session replay. And we can see not only when customers are achieving success, but also we can see it when users are getting frustrated or if something isn't working. So this is an actual video of a user going through the process. And it's also great for, just understanding where the issues are and fixing it quickly. And we also use surveys all throughout the product and make sure that our customers know that we're actively listening to them. So AI is great for, generating summaries and themes of overarching things that we can improve in the future. So to sum up this session, the keys to delivering personalization and driving outcomes at scale really boil down to four core strategies: segmentation, identifying critical moments in the user journey, automating where you can, and continuously refining the process as you go. So if this seems overwhelming and you don't know where to begin, that's okay. Just remember the mantra that guided us when we first got started, which is to solve for the 80%. You will not get it right 100% of the time for every user, and that's okay. So you have to start somewhere. And by introducing experiences that work for the majority of your users, both in and outside of your product, you can ensure that all users are set up to achieve meaningful outcomes and long-term success. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Erica. We'll do some Q&A right now, so feel free to drop your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A section. There's actually a couple questions that already came in through the chat. The first of which is, how do you measure that a given user is following the intended success path?
How do you measure that a user is following yeah, so I think this goes back to every customer's journey looks very different. And so we used to be really focused on, did they do this, then did they do this, then did they do this, and then that. But then we really shifted our mindset to um this and the outcome. So however they got to that outcome, we do want to make sure that it is like the shortest time to value as possible, but we just are looking at those kind of journeys and those points of entry and trying to guide people to the fastest time to value. Um, so it's not necessarily about them doing it exactly the way we want them to do it, but we try to guide them as quickly as possible to the things that we believe are going to gain those aha moments as quickly as possible. And that's through why are they there and who are they?
Got it. Got it. And I think there was a clarifying question on this. What leading metrics help you here?
What leading metrics help us? Yeah, so time to first use, the what I showed, where we can see, for these events that are critical to aha moments and value, we can see if it takes somebody 15 days, 8 days, and then we can start to get an average of when we think that they should get there based off of kind of what everybody else is doing. And then we look at second week retention because we believe that if people are getting value within that first week, they're going to come back for the second week.
Makes sense. Another question. Curious how you layer in email or other communication flows on top of the in-app experience so that it feels unified. I think probably unified is the key word here.
Yeah, yeah. So we definitely layer email. I think it's pretty standard that when you join a new software, you get like a welcome email. And so that's going to be within the first day. And we make sure that we're not doing too much in app. We don't want people to feel overwhelmed, but we kind of we use our own, systems to just make sure that there are days in between, right? So day one, you get a welcome email. And then 2 days later, you get the email that gives you a little bit more information about analytics. Or if you said that you want to guide users, we would then email you something about guides. And then 2 days later, we would email you your persona-based content. So it's in a very structured cadence to make sure that we're not overwhelming our users with too much information.
Got it. Got it. Another question here. How did you attribute ROI to emails? At times, it's hard to isolate impact to an email when other efforts are also at play.
That is really hard, actually. I don't think that we'll ever solve for that, if I'm being honest, but the easiest way for us to know whether this particular method was successful or not is by experimenting. So when I showed that first slide around second week retention, we did an experiment where we had a cohort that received the previous experience and then a separate cohort that started to receive the new experience. So then the only, thing that changed, the only variable was the fact that we had started sending emails. And so, correlation, causation, the semantics of it all, right? But as long as you have that data, you can tell that story about the things that you're doing. And so it's really, really important that as you're starting this, say it's an experiment. There's no failures in experimentation, right? There's only learnings. And just make sure you set it up in a way that you're testing it and then you're tweaking it. And then, once you feel confident that you are seeing a significant improvement or what I call do no harm metrics, then you can release it to all of your customers.
Got it. Another question here. How do you balance the need to customize with the need to keep things updated? That overhead of just maintaining all the content is significant.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the one nice thing about in-app is it's pretty flexible and extensible. You can make changes a lot faster. Um, but yeah, it is something that you always have to kind of think about and make sure that you're constantly having up-to-date information, whether it's in the product or even outside of the product. And that's really by working really closely with your product teams and making sure that you're embedded in kind of that product development life cycle. Um, I think a lot of companies think of education or customer success as outside the product development life cycle, but we're so critical to making sure our customers know how to use the tool that they purchase. So yeah, I would just say it's kind of a constant iterative, you're never done, right? In a way, it's job security, right? You just like,
It's
okay,
true.
we did this big, massive thing and we know it's going to change. So try to build it like I said, to solve for kind of like 80% of the use cases. So that way, if minor things change here and there, you're still covering your core personas, you're still covering your core use cases.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Kind of to that point, what tool did you use for the in-app notification and sort of hopscotch prompts?
Yeah, so that was Pendo.
Oh, Pendle, there you go. All right, saw it
Yeah.
built into the product. Okay. And then like you showed that one slide about, those that engaged with the walkthroughs were, so much more engaged and had better actions afterwards. What percentage of users engaged versus didn't engage with those walkthroughs?
Yeah, initially it was a much lower percentage of customers that engaged with the walkthroughs that didn't, or that did not engage with the walkthrough. So we definitely identified that as a problem. And we actually took that to the product team and we said, look, users who go through these walkthroughs are, 12 times more likely to actually do the outcome, do the thing that we want them to do and complete the workflow. So how do we get users to go to those walkthroughs? And so they actually built kind of like an activation point within our homepage and within the product. So that not only was it in the resource center, but it was actually a part of the user experience and the product. And so then we saw a huge increase in users who were going through the walkthroughs, which was a win for us and a win for the product as well.
Got it. Um, on the second week retention, what type of actions do you take to get them back in the product or understand why they stopped?
I think this is where the email piece really, I mean, I don't know if I have a better answer than we started reaching users outside of the product. And so, I think because the emails were really, really personalized, if we didn't get their attention, within the first 2 days of being in the product, then maybe we got their attention by sending them those personalized resources based off of the things they said they did want to do. So I truly think that it was the email and the multi-channel approach that helped drive that reminder, like, oh yeah, this is why I'm here. I need to go back and do these things.
Hmm. Hmm. As I start a new CS department, I have struggled with metrics to grow in areas. What are your suggestions on identifying the baseline metrics as I build out the department?
Oh man, I really think it depends on the company and what matters to the business. So I know that is like not really the best answer, but um, I think if your company is struggling with product usage, then your North Star metric should really focus around utilization. It should really focus around adoption of critical events. If you're having some retention issues, then I would really focus on churn and risk, and establishing KPIs around that. I really just think it depends on what the business cares about, but I think at the end of the day, I might be biased, but product usage is always like the root of why a customer decides to churn at the end if they're not getting value, or if they're just not using it, then obviously they're not getting value, or if the product isn't delivering what they thought it was going to. So that to me is always like a surefire way of really identifying and assessing what the customer's pain points are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Um, are all of those emails automated through Pendo?
They are.
There you go.
I
I thought
didn't
that was
want
an
this to be a
easy one.
Pendo sales pitch.
Fair, 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 fair.
No, I
Um,
didn't talk a lot about what tool we actually use, but all of what you saw was using Pendo. So yes, like I said, very lucky to have had all of these tools at my disposal. And, the interesting challenge is now I'm at a new company and, I'm kind of starting from beginnings as well. So more to
totally.
come.
Another question, how do you help safeguard against the other 20% having a poor as opposed to just non-applicable experience in-app with in-app engagements?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an unpopular answer, but you cannot please everyone.
Yeah,
And,
that makes sense.
I always, even when I'm looking at like, how do I build out an engagement model for my CSMs? 80/20 rule. You protect 80% of the revenue and you have to be okay with the other 20% either not being happy, not having it be exactly the way they want it. Obviously, we care. If the 20% includes, a really large enterprise or a key customer, then you want to have conversations. But uh maybe they weren't a good fit to begin with. But yeah, I just think you cannot customize for every nuanced, thing. And that's where professional services can come in. That's where a CSM really comes in. So from a digital perspective, you can't solve for everybody's use cases. That's when you layer on the humans.
Totally, totally. I think last question. Do you think we are sometimes too sensitive to digital? I think most customers know they are segmented in some fashion. Your thoughts on just calling that out and having them tell you if they need something different?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody learns very differently. To your point, some people, you know, I think nowadays everybody knows, right? You're collecting information about me, and everything is automated. But I don't personally care if something is automated or if it's a real human typing something, as long as I'm getting the information that I need. So that's why collecting feedback about the experience is so critical, because you can start to gauge themes. Like, this feels like it's not really tailored to me, or this isn't meeting my needs. And then you kind of just treat it as another kind of iterative experiment where you start to adjust and tweak based off of the feedback that you're getting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, we are at the end of our session. The recording of this session will be available early next week in our resource hub. All summit attendees will be notified when the resource hub is live. And just big thank you to Erica, our speaker, for joining us today. And thank you to everybody for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.